CTE or CCTE, which is College and Career Technical Education, is really about preparing students to be ready for whatever their future might hold. So it starts to engage kids at an early age and expose them to different pathways and different career possibilities.
I was one of those really strange students who at age 5 was telling people I was going to be an architect, right? So I went through junior high and high school and had the opportunity to take courses that at the time were kind of called industrial arts, but I loved them because that was often the best part of my day. Being able to see these kinds of spaces and how they're picked up by students, I think it's kind of bringing something back.
A CTE classroom, there's no specific guideline for how to develop that. When it comes to the specialized labs, it's really dependent on what those specific career pathways are and what the academy is going to focus on. A lot of that comes from the research that we've done pre-design, touring with the client, going to the industry fields and looking at the studios or looking at the labs, really understanding what kind of equipment they might be putting into those labs.
We sat down, in our first charrette, and that was the whole integrated team, all sitting around the table with this idea of a program, and we're looking at this existing middle school site. When it goes and becomes a high school, right, what are the questions that you're asking? What's going to be the impact of parking and students driving? What are the sensitivity to the neighbors? How are we going to put in, a 2-story school when the neighborhood is very used to this 1-story middle school? How can we maintain the existing trees? The big idea was always that this school was within a park. And so how could we kind of maintain that story through the design? Through that process, we came up with this idea of a really kind of linear organization to the campus that pushed it as far north as we could, adjacent to the open space of the park and the really tall eucalyptus trees, which allowed us to put a really large setback to the post-World War II homes and the character of the existing residential neighborhood, so they could really feel like they still had a park across the street.
At South Tahoe High School, we actually toured a lot of studios in Hollywood. It wasn't even just the architect and the designer, it was us along with the client, along with teachers, along with their students, and really looked at what kinds of equipment are they using, what kinds of technologies do they have in the real world scenario so that can be replicated. The great advantage is that a lot of these schools that we were working with had applied for CTE grant funding, so they had the ability to purchase the actual equipment that the studios were using or that the engineering firms were using, and that gives those students that chance to be able to really engage with that. Some of the other great things about the labs at McBride High School is that we really looked for the ability to extend the classroom. So for instance, at Health, Medical, and Science, they can have a EMS truck pull up and really kind of go through the procedure of what that would actually be like in the real world. It's really about spreading that classroom and allowing that learning to happen everywhere.
It takes a team to come up with an idea as great as McBride, so I'm really proud to be a part of that team.